This was, again, the gentleman, the case we've talked about several times now, who was arrested and prosecuted for a violation of the FACE Act because of a little contretemps he got into with a Planned Parenthood ghoul outside of Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia, where he pushed him away from his son after Mark Houck said, "Don't address my adolescent son. If you have something to say, you address me." He wouldn't stop harassing them, and Houck pushed him away. Local prosecutors declined. Private suits were dismissed. Planned Parenthood even, I think, eliminated the guy as a docent to the mill because that was not his first incident of not following Planned Parenthood protocol. But nonetheless, Merrick Garland came in over the top.
Oh, yeah.
And it took the jury less than an hour to acquit him. Oh, and it was in spite of the fact that his attorneys, Mark Houck's attorneys,
said he'd turn himself in, right?
Right.
Oh, no, they had to come in with guns a-blazing.
Amphibious vehicles, choppers, SUVs, guns pointed.
SWAT gear, yeah.
Christopher Wray had this to say in response to that decision.
That decision to use that force, was that by the book?
So there's a whole lot of things that goes into the judgment about what is the way to conduct arrests safely and securely that are made, I think, appropriately by the career agents on the ground who have the closest visibility to the circumstances.
Oh, really? Oh, we defer to the career agents on the ground. It's not the brass making those calls.
Yeah, we had nothing to do with it.
We're just rubber stamping what the career agents who have the best visibility on the ground say. Oh, really? Then maybe in a follow-up interview, Brett Baer can ask about this Amazon Post story. According to the, well, I guess some people still call it the Washington Post, FBI officials and the DOJ clashed fiercely over how to handle recovering suspected classified documents from Trump, with FBI agents arguing for a cooperative approach and the DOJ pushing for the unprecedented raid on Trump's home. What happened to the deference to the career agents on the ground with the most visibility? Chris, Merrick. For more on this, pleased to be joined by our friend Andy McCarthy. He's a contributing editor at National Review. He's the best-selling author of Ball of Collusion, and he also is a former chief assistant U.S. attorney in Manhattan. Andy, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Happy Friday.
Yeah, can you help square the circle for me? I'm puzzled.
Well, I think we're this term career agents, I think, is something that we ought to be looking at with a lot more skepticism, since it's something that gets thrown around all the time. I would just ask people, who do you think gets promoted up the chain in the FBI and in the Justice Department? You know, I thought when I was a prosecutor, you know, there were really good agents, and there was a certain kind of FBI type that, you know, was a sort of don't rock the boat, understand what the bosses want and give them what they want and do everything by their book, even when it means, you know, bucking common sense and bucking what, you know, good prosecutors and good agents wanted. And those were the guys who tended to get promoted up the chain. So I think what we have to understand here is that every agency has an ethos, which is set from the top. And the fact that decisions are being made closer to the ground doesn't mean that they don't reflect what the bosses want. The way you move up the chain in the FBI is to do what the brass wants. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing, Dan, is the Justice Department under Garland, I don't think, looks at the Hope case as a loss. The same way that the SEC, for example, doesn't look at the, you know, 5 or 6 cases that it's recently, you know, have been laughed out of court that they brought as losses, because, you know, we're thinking of them as losses because, you know, in the final scorebook, they go down as a loss. But to these people, the process, which they always make more and more complex and arduous, is the penalty. So the outcome almost doesn't make any difference. What they're looking to do is create an interorum effect that tells everybody out there, if you dare engage in this kind of behavior, this is what's coming your way. It's the bottom line. If they get an acquittal, so what? They still, scared the bejesus out of everybody who would, be thinking of engaging in this behavior. And just like every corporation in America knows that if it even thinks about trying to merge and increase its value, it better have a king's ransom set aside for legal fees because the Justice Department's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. How did you receive Merrick Garland's explanation about the lack of prosecutions for people who have committed violent acts against pregnancy care centers and Catholic churches as compared to the number of prosecutions of people praying or even engaged in illegal activity outside of abortion mills? He essentially said, well, the cases involving the abortion mills are easier because those acts were committed in the daylight, and then these fire bombings and other vandalism threats against pregnancy care centers and Catholic churches, a lot of that's done at night. So I guess the message is that, if you're going to commit a crime and you want to avoid DOJ scrutiny, then, do it in the dark.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was a prosecutor, we thought, we didn't hang out a close sign when the sun went down. So I'm a little bit puzzled by. I'm not really puzzled by anything the Attorney General says. I mean, I think one thing we've seen since he's been in is that his testimony is always borderline preposterous. He delivers it with a kind of very civil tone, very understated. He's unfailingly polite, and therefore he gets away with a lot. But when you read the transcript of what he said, just like when you listen to it, it's not sensible. I didn't think those answers were very convincing. They weren't convincing at all.
He also was very outraged. He's just as upset as Josh Hawley is about the memo that came out of the Richmond FBI office looking to target Catholics who go to Latin Mass because the Southern Poverty Law Center says they could be associated with right-wing extremism. He's outraged about that because they have a rule. I didn't know this. At the Department of Justice, they have a rule where we don't investigate things that would be violative of people's First Amendment rights. Why do you need a rule at the Department of Justice? What's the First Amendment for?
Yeah, not only that, but it's embedded in federal law. If you remember when the Patriot Act came out years ago, can you believe this is almost a quarter century ago now, but almost every provision in that act says explicitly that First Amendment protected activity by itself cannot be the premise for an investigation. So it's very easy for the Attorney General to come out with mock outrage. But I would simply point out that when America's parents were being investigated by the FBI under a domestic terrorism threat tag that the FBI conjured up, that was on the basis of a memo from none other than Merrick Garland, after basically a concocted partisan exercise between the Biden White House and some left-wing ideologues. They sent Garland a memo, and then Garland sent U.S. attorneys and the FBI a memo, and the next thing you know, they were out treating parents as suspects for protesting at their home. So I'm sure Garland is very upset about these memos, but I think he's more upset that they've been publicized than the fact that they exist.
More upset that people look at the FBI as a hate organization, like me.
Well, look, the FBI seems to be. I have a lot of affection for a lot of people in the FBI, but they seem in the last 10 years in particular to be living down to everybody's worst.
So, Mr. McCarthy, we're learning this morning that President Trump can be sued by police officers who were injured on January 6th. The DOJ just gave the green light to that. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's not just police officers, it's congressional Democrats as well. Oh, yeah. Some of the most partisan Democrats, rabid anti-Trumpers, Eric Swalwell and Barbara Lee and Maxine Waters, they were all plaintiffs in the case. And I was very amused to see that in the brief, the Justice Department sort of dryly says, Benny Thompson was a plaintiff, but he dropped his claims without, with prejudice. And what they don't say is the reason he did that was because he would have otherwise been disqualified from his star turn as chairman of the January 6th committee,
right.
which, turned around and made a finding that Trump had committed incitement to insurrection under circumstances where after 2.5 years, the Justice Department hasn't charged anyone with insurrection and hasn't charged Trump with incitement of anything or with any crime to this point. So it's astounding as a legal matter, it's astounding for the Justice Department to take the position they took. But again, whenever there's a choice between law and politics, the Biden Justice Department under Merrick Garland goes with politics. And what they know is if they came out and said, we can't charge Trump with incitement because the case would get laughed out of court, there would be mutiny in the Democratic base. So they figured out a way to say, even though we haven't charged it because we don't have evidence of it, there's no reason why a case alleging it shouldn't go forward.
Yeah, and that's what we call justice in the justice system, or justice in America now. This is of the order of the Soviets. Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime. That's what we have here.
Well, again, Dan, it's the process is the penalty.
Yeah.
They haven't really. I'm not. I always feel like I have to say I'm not here being Trump's lawyer, but they are trying, and there may be things that he's done that he'll ultimately be charged with that'll stick. We'll see. But they are trying to bleed him with process. And I would note that most of the prosecutorial positions in the United States at the state level are elected positions. And a lot of these progressive prosecutors and state attorneys general are seeking office on the premise that they'll use their power to go after Trump as an election issue, which is very popular in Democratic cities. So, again, they're trying to bludgeon him with process. And I don't see that that's going to stop.
Right, at the federal and state level, as we know. And speaking of star turns, the jury four-person there in Georgia, sort of an amateur David Copperfield, I understand, she was having fun talking about what she thought she could talk about on the cable news shows. And she certainly is hopeful that something will occur, like prosecutions that the special grand jury recommended. How did you react to what came out of that special grand jury, and what's your feel in terms of what's going to happen in the state of Georgia?
Well, I think she's an oddball. I thought it was, look, a grand jury is a very human thing, and a group of 24 people, you have somebody who decides that she wants to have her 15 minutes of fame. I thought it was worse that the judge, instead of condemning what she had done, which was compromising grand jury secrecy. I mean, even former Democratic, former federal prosecutors who want to see Trump get charged were out there publicly saying, "My God, what is she doing? She's destroying the case." So it was clear that what she did was terrible, and the judge came out and said it really wasn't any big deal, which kind of encourages other grand jurors to do it. We know from what she says that special grand jury has recommended a variety of charges, and it's clear from what she said that Trump is at the top of the list that they've recommended to be charged. She didn't come out and say that, but she as much as said it. What people ought to know is the way Georgia law works. I've had to get I'm not an expert on Georgia law, so I've had to get sort of up to speed on it like everyone else. But that grand jury is only allowed to recommend charges. It's a special grand jury under Georgia law. They do investigations and then they make recommendations. Now it's up to the district attorney, who is a partisan Democrat named Fannie Willis, to decide whether she wants to go to regular grand juries and seek charges, which she hasn't done so far, but I anticipate she probably will at some point. I imagine she's also working behind the scenes with the Justice Department to coordinate, is DOJ going to charge Trump? If they are, what are they going to charge him with? And if so, who should go first, Georgia or DOJ? So all that has to be worked out. Yeah, no, I mean,
One star turn on the left deserves another. I'm sure that Fulton County DA is looking for her star turn, too. Maybe she can parlay it into a run for governor or something in the state of Georgia, Senate, something. Well, maybe not Senate. There's 2 Dems, but maybe something. That's what this is all about. That's what the justice system is. It seems to me, for many of these actors who wield significant power, this is just about what do I need to do to get up the next rung of the ladder, to curry favor, to generate publicity. The pursuit of the truth and the and Lady Justice being blind and the even-handed administration of the law, those things seem out the window, and I don't think I'm the only one who feels that. And go ahead and do what you're going to do with Trump, and I hope they've properly calibrated what the reaction's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know if they have, but I would say this. The power that they wield depends on the public's acceptance that the Justice Department isn't a rigged game and that the justice system isn't a rigged game. And the minute that people become convinced that it is, that power is not going to be what it once was. And my first rule of politics, like a number of other people's, is what goes around comes around. So, these people can abuse their power now, but they'll be recompensed for it.
Andy McCarthy, former chief assistant U.S. attorney in Manhattan, contributor to National Review, author of the bestseller Ball of Collusion, the plot to rig an election and destroy a presidency. Andy, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
If I could be you.
And you could be me?
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes. It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity during tax season because so much sensitive info is all together.